Hi students, in the previous class we have seen reading comprehension and I gave an activity related to reading comprehension. In this session you will be learning about listening comprehension because I already told you there are 4 different skills which you have to learn. And coming to reading comprehension, you have read a passage and you come to know how you need to go for a self-learning mode and how you to acquire vocabulary while you are reading. Today's session, you are going to learn the listening comprehension. When you listen to an audio or a lecture, how you need to learn and how you have to take different modes of or different methods when you are listening. So generally when you have a competitive exams, like when you are writing any IELTS examination or when you are writing any business English communication examination, so you have to prepare all these 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading and writing. So there are a couple of tests where your listening skill will be tested. Your listening skill will be tested. So actually what you are going to learn. The first thing, what is listening comprehension? What is meant by listening comprehension? And what is the requirement or purpose of listening comprehension? And what are the stages that are involved in listening comprehension? And then who are the types of listeners? There are a couple of listeners who are interested to listen and some listeners who are not interested, and some listeners are passive listeners or some are detached listeners. We'll see all these things when we are going into the session. And then what is the purpose of listening? And what are the barriers of listening? What are the hurdles which avoid you from listening? And then non-verbal signs for ineffective listening, because there are a couple of mood swings which you feel very discomfort or which you feel discomfort when you are listening. And then note-taking activity. So on the whole, you will be having note-taking activity in all the units. You have note-taking activity and you have note-making activity. And as I mentioned, note-taking is a listening activity. You listen to a lecture or listen to a note, or you listen to a lecture, or you listen to a video or audio and you will be taking notes. When you read a comprehension, when you read a text, you will make notes. That is a basic difference between note taking and note making. So we'll see in detail about this and ultimately summarizing concept. So this is in a nutshell what you're going to learn in this video. Shall we go? Yes. Thank you. Now what is this? What this boy is doing? He is very interested to listen. So what is the difference between listening and hearing? See, generally when any train goes or if any chair moves, what you do? You will hear. You don't concentrate. But when you are listening to a song, you just concentrate. So listening is a psychological process. You listen with concentration. So mind is also involved. Listening comprehension is just more than hearing. And then listening is a process of receiving, and you receive some information and you construct what the meaning would be and you respond into the spoken form or maybe written form. So that is actually a listening process. So what is the process of listening? Listening is a process of receiving, constructing meaning from and responding by speaking and non-verbal messages. And then listening is an active process. So actually listening is an active process. That means you need to involve yourself when you are listening. But when it comes to skill, it's a passive skill. Nobody understands whether you understood or not. You yourself should know whether you have understood the concept or not. So in a nutshell, listening comprehension is a little bit more than hearing. And again I'm repeating, listening is a psychological process whereas hearing is a physical process. And then when it goes to listening process, listening is a process of receiving, constructing meaning from and responding to spoken and non-verbal messages. Responding to spoken and non-verbal messages. Okay. And then it's nothing but feedback. And then listening is an active process. It's an active process. So this is the process of listening. So first, what happens when somebody speaks, or when you listen to a lecture, or when you listen to an audio? What happens? First you receive. First your ear receives the information, and then your brain understands what the information that is received, and then it just send into the memory, and once it is into the memory, it just starts evaluating whether it's right or wrong, and then you'll give feedback. Feedback is nothing but your response. So this is a process of listening. So how many stages are involved here? 5 stages. What are those 5 stages? First receiving, next understanding, next remembering, followed by evaluating, and then giving feedback or giving response. So now, most interesting concept which you all like the most, types of listeners. Types of listeners. So who are the types of listeners? I'm just stick on to only academic listeners. It's purely related to academics, so I'm sticking on to academic and communication based listeners. So here, the first category of listeners is detached. They're not interested. They're completely in another world, roaming around in the mind, wavering around inside. But superficially, you could feel like they are listening to you, but their mind is somewhere. So that kind of listeners we call as detached listeners. So here, avoids making eye contact, definitely. And those people looks like withdrawn, and then lack enthusiasm. They don't answer for any questions. They don't feel comfortable when you ask anything, or they don't give an impression like they're listening also in such a way, and seems inattentive and disinterested or bored. If you're not interested, how you give expressions? In the same way, detached listeners will give the expressions. And then next one, passive listeners. So may or may not make eye contact. So at times they'll give eye contact, at times they may not give eye contact, and then they pretend as if they are giving attention and uses little energy or effort. Appears calm and laid back. So all these are the features of passive listeners. And then involved. There are a couple of listeners who are very much involved. So provides some direct eye contact, and then has an alert posture. So you can make out by seeing their posture, sitting style, and then gives the speaker some attention. So they gives attention to the speaker and reflects on the message to a degree. So whatever message they have got, they give feedback. So you can make out that they have involved. And then active listeners. Very, very interesting group. Active listeners means has an alert posture. So you can see the posture, proper alert posture you can make out, and then uses direct eye contact and gives full attention. It's very important. They give full attention and focus on what is said and participates completely. So they'll completely participate and they'll pay complete attention. So how many types of listeners I've mentioned here? First one is detached, and second one passive listeners, and third one involved, and fourth category is active. So active listeners, whether the teacher says or not, definitely they'll be active. And involved listeners, they have the mindset to participate and definitely they'll try to involve. Coming to the passive listeners, they keep some effort. So if the activity is little bit interesting and all that, this passive listeners will become involved listeners. And coming to detached listeners, for them there should be some curiosity. There should be some curiosity, and based on the curiosity they will listen. So if the activities are very interesting and if they feel that they'll enjoy that activity, then that kind of listeners will become passive listeners and henceforth become involved, and then they will come into the category of active listeners. So these are the 4 types of listeners. So next one, for anything, even if it is any skill or even if it is any contribution, unless you have a purpose, you cannot do it. So actually, what would be the purpose? So listening serves a number of possible purposes, and the purpose of listening will depend on the situation and the nature of communication. So this is very important. So listening, it depends on the situation and the nature of communication, how you are communicating, whether you are whispering or whether you are communicating through oral media or whether you are communicating through audio visuals or any kind of communication. So that is one purpose, and other one is based on the situation. So coming to various purposes, or as I mentioned earlier, listening serves a number of possible purposes. So in a nutshell, we'll see 6 different purposes. The first one, to specifically focus on the messages being communicated, avoiding distractions and preconceptions. You have to avoid the distractions and preconceptions. Like for example, when I listen to something, if I have a pre-idea about the topic which I listen to, then I come to a conclusion. So I should be very, very careful. I should be very specific when it is a message of that kind. And then to gain a full and accurate understanding into the speaker's point of view and ideas. So when I listen to learn something, so I need to concentrate and get some ideas related to the speaker. So what is the feeling of the speaker, I should understand. So I have to, look into from the shoes of the speaker. That's very important. And then to critically assess what is being said. So if you want to critically assess something, then you need to go for listening, proper listening. And then to observe the non-verbal signs accompanying what is being said to enhance understanding. So there are a couple of instances where non-verbal signs also plays a vital role, and along with listening, if some non-verbal signs are there, like intonation or tone or mood of the speaker or attitude of the speaker, all this matters, right? So based on that, how you will understand. That's very important purpose. And then especially when it is cross-cultural communication, this plays a vital role. And then to show interest, concern and concentration. So, when you keep on listening properly, you have to pay attention. Then automatically you can learn the entire concept. And then to encourage the speaker to communicate fully, openly and honestly. And remember, if you give an impression as if you are listening carefully, the speaker will get an interest to speak clearly. So, and honestly. So that's very, very important purpose. So what are the barriers of listening? So generally you keep on listening something. If some sound comes beside that, or some noise goes, or maybe train goes, then automatically how you feel. So it's a barrier. So in such a way, what are the barriers of listening? The first one, trying to listen to more than one conversation at a time. So you're very curious to listen to many conversation at times. So you cannot justify it. That would be a barrier. You have to concentrate on only one angle or one conversation. And then find the communicator attractive or unattractive. If you feel that the speaker is attractive, then you feel curious to learn. If the speaker is not attractive, you don't feel, so you don't listen to. So that is another barrier. And third one is not interested in the topic or issue. If you're not interested in certain topics, then you don't feel comfortable in listening. And then not focusing. So at that time you're not feeling good or you're not interested, then automatically you cannot focus on the concept. And then feeling unwell or tired. So when you feel tired or when you feel you're not healthy or you have some health issue or boring or sleepy or drowsy, automatically you cannot listen. And then identifying rather than emphasizing. So when you could identify something but you don't want to stress on that, automatically you may not feel comfortable. And then prejudiced or biased by race, gender, age, religion, accent and or past experiences. So if any bias is there or if any kind of any prejudice is there, any criticism is there, then you may not feel convenient to listen. You may not be comfortable. And then have preconceived ideas or bias. So if you have some idea already and if you're listening, so you listen with your preconceived idea, automatically you don't feel comfortable in listening. And then make judgments. So you cannot come to a conclusion just like that before listening. Okay, if you do like that, if you come to a judgment or if you make judgments, automatically you may not feel convenient in listening. And having a closed mind. If you're open and accept criticism, and if you're open to various ideas and all that, then definitely you feel comfortable in listening. But if you have a closed mindset, then automatically you cannot open your ears. So now, non-verbal signs of ineffective listening. So what are those? First thing, lack of eye contact with the speaker. And then inappropriate posture. You sit like this, or you bend back, you come forward, you move your legs this and that side, bend your neck this and that side. So that kind of body language would be shown, and eye contact will not be with the speaker. And then being distracted, you give an impression that you're being distracted. And the inappropriate expressions and lack of head nods, as I mentioned earlier. Other common traits of ineffective listening: sudden changes in topic. So when the topic gets changed immediately, when the speaker is speaking about something and immediately the speaker changes the topic, then you don't feel like listening. Or selective listening. If you feel like, okay, I'll listen to only this concept, or I'll listen to the biography of so and so person, then if they cannot speak that, automatically you will switch yourself. And then daydreaming. At times, some people, they just open their eyes and they dream about something, they think about something. And then advising. So a couple of people, they keep on they're giving some advices, and based on the advices, people will listen. So that's also one of the disadvantage or common traits of ineffective listening. So here, this is a video on TED Talk by Anupam Mishra, and you just listen to the video. In the previous class, I have given you some ideas related to note taking, and what are the various topics and what are the various methods of taking notes. So just you go through that, and based on that you select one format and write the notes. Take the notes from this video. Again, I'm repeating, in yesterday's class I gave you different formats for different methods of note taking. So select one method and write whatever you listened here in one of the formats. In this session, I mentioned what is meant by listening comprehension, and then what are the stages of listening, and then types of listeners, who are the types of listeners, and what is the purpose of listening, and barriers of listening, and some non-verbal signs of ineffective listening. Any queries so far? So in the next session, I want you to make notes by reading the Unit 1 reading comprehension passages, how to regain green cover, and solution to plastic pollution. I want you to make notes for those two topics, and I want you to take notes for this TED Talk by Anupam Mishra on water harvesting. Thank you. Meet you in the next class. Thank you very much.